What's going on, guys? Hey, man, listen, we've got a different video, as you can tell by probably the title and the thumbnail. So there has been so much change in the Ukrainian military. It's been completely overhauled, effectively. Um, I mean, I won't even get into all that, but things have changed, and there are there are exponentially more options for foreigners as far as joining Ukrainian military units for a couple different reasons. The infrastructure has been set up, fleshed out more. It's not a scramble like it was in 2022, 2023 when they were just trying to get people rifles and send them to help defend the country, right? There's been more time to get everything squared away, and also people are dying and they need more people. So they are in Ukraine, they're more incentivized to make a better foreigner recruitment, make better foreigner recruitment options. So let me give you guys a little background first about me. If this is your first time here watching, coming to the channel because of this specific topic, and then we'll jump into it. Okay, this won't be a very long video. I say that every time, then it ends up being long. But all right. So my name is Sax, and I go by Vegas here in Ukraine. Before I came to Ukraine, I was a firefighter and an EMT outside of Fort Worth, Texas. Once I finished my EMT license, I came to Ukraine. I tried to join some medical, basically tried to volunteer in some hospitals. It wasn't working because that foreigner infrastructure wasn't set up yet. Nobody spoke English, nobody knew what to do with me. Anyways, I joined the International Legion, the original International Legion for the Defense of Ukraine, with the 6 infantry battalions. I was in 1st Battalion, Charlie Company, 3rd Platoon. We deployed to Kupiansk, did a couple different combat missions when I was with Charlie Company, and then left, came back, met up with a group of foreigners, and we were contacted about an idea of starting Azov's 1st International Battalion. And so me and a couple other guys and girls, actually, or girl, um, including an Azov commander, went to work starting Azov's International Battalion. And so, out of necessity, I was kind of pushed into a recruitment position early on because I have a large network here in Ukraine. I know a lot of people, and I also have social media. So, I spent some time in recruitment up until we fully staffed, if you will, our Alpha company, our first unit. Then I um, joined Alpha Company, trained with Alpha Company, deployed with Alpha Company, did combat operations with them, and then eventually, after that deployment, left, came back, and was doing more recruitment stuff, whatever. Now I am kind of more of a freelance, if you will. That sounds like I do this for money. I don't. I'm not getting paid by any of these units to recruit people. I actually never was even before. So this is strictly based off of my experience here in Ukraine, the people that I know here, working with some of these units personally on the front line, and just my knowledge. Okay, so one of the biggest questions we get is, what unit should I join? What unit is the best? So I made a tier list, and I want to be clear about this tier list. This isn't intended to belittle any units or um, you know, discredit any units. I don't want to hurt any feelings here, okay? But I do want to try to bring as accurate of information as possible. And if it means I have to hurt some feelings in the process to make sure you guys get to the unit you're looking for, so be it. Okay. So there's 3 different criteria that I made this tier list off of, okay? Number 1 is level of training. How solid is the training? Is it professional? Is there a selection process, right? Is there physical fitness requirements? Is there age requirements? Stuff like that. That's the first category. Second category is issued kit and resources. Do these units get you good gear? Do they get you good plate carriers and rifles and so on and so forth? Also, when I say resources, that means, are these units big enough to where if you were on a combat mission with them, could you call in for counter battery? Could you call in for dropper drones? Could you call in for FPV support? That kind of stuff as well. Okay, so that's what I mean by issued kit slash resources. Are they an established enough unit to where you'll have some of these resources in the field if you need them? Lastly, is level of experience needed to join? Okay, some of these units you need to have experience, point blank, period. Otherwise, they will not take you. Others welcome people with no military experience because then the Ukrainian military can kind of shape and mold you into this type of combat theater, this type of wars. Combat environment rather than already having habits and experience in different theaters of war in different areas of the world, different war zones. Okay, so those are the three criteria. Again, level of training, issued kit and resources, amount of experience needed. So here at the top, we have S tier. This is what I say most SSO units, and there is no exact science to this. That's why nobody has made a video like this regarding Ukrainian military units. There's not one out there, right? There is no real science to it. The Ukrainian military is genuinely very confusing to understand. And then you have to incorporate foreigners into that and the different foreigner structure. It's a confusing thing, right? So this isn't 100% black and white, right? When I say most SSO units, I'm sure there's some bad SSO units out there. In fact, I can guarantee there are. Okay, but from my experience, from the people that I know, from the people that are currently operating in some of these units, this is what I'm basing my my perfect my opinions off of. Good lord, dude, my whole brain fell out. All right, so S tier SSO units. Why SSO units? So first of all, SSO are your special forces, your SOF units of Ukraine. Now, don't when you hear soft, don't compare that to tier one operators in the United States or in Europe. Okay, special forces mean something different in Ukraine, but they are higher level combat units. These guys are more trained, a lot more trained than your average, have a lot more experience than your average soldier, so on and so forth. So SSO is special forces. Um, they have a pretty strict selection process. You have to go through multiple physical fitness requirements. They need to be met, and if they're not, you are removed from selection and removed from the recruitment process. So they don't play around with that. They also have very strict age requirements. You can't be over 45 in SSO. You can't obviously be under 18. But in my experience, most SSO units don't even take 18 or 19-year olds because frankly they're still kids, and in almost every situation that I have met an 18 or 19-year-old online that's trying to come to Ukraine, they're coming for all the wrong reasons. They're asking all the wrong questions. They're trying to pick which unit that they're going to join based off of which rifles they get issued. They're not fully developed yet, and so the age requirements of SSO are 18 to 45, but most won't even go under 20. So selection, physical fitness requirements, that's a big thing. They want to make sure everybody's able to do these 20-kilometer ruck marches with 30 kilos in their pack, right? They want to make sure that everybody's strong enough to be able to casualty evacuate their battle buddy if needed, which odds are going to happen. That type of stuff. Issued kit and resources with SSO, because SSO are such smaller units. They are they get a little bit more attention in that sense. They can get some of the higher quality equipment. They can get some of the higher quality kit and gear and weapons and stuff like that. But that said, that's not the case for all SSO units, and most SSO guys that I know just bring all their own kit anyways. So the way this typically works is, um, this leads to the third category, which is amount of experience needed. SSO units want experienced guys. The SSO is going to have your most experienced guys, guys who came into the International Legion like I did originally, and then they joined a different unit, maybe a GOR unit, or they joined a Third Assault Brigade or Azov's International Battalion, and then they came to SSO. And before all that, they even had 4 years in the Marine Corps, right, in the U.S., or they had multiple years in the Army, something like that. SSO units are typically going to require the most experience before accepting somebody. Um, yeah, every SSO guy I know has been in at least two, sometimes three, sometimes four different units here in Ukraine, and usually has military experience back in the US. If they haven't had US military experience in the US, then they have been here in Ukraine since the beginning of the war, since 2022, and they've been working, and they have a very they're extremely experienced in warfare and this war particularly, but just being a soldier in general because they've been doing this for the last 4 or 5 years. So that's SSO. That is our S tier. Some people will ask me like, "Hey, what unit should I apply for?" You can't just go out and apply for the top tier unit. Like if you're a civilian in the United States, you're not just going to go say, "Okay, I'm gonna go be a Navy SEAL now," right? That's I'm not comparing Navy SEALs to SSO, but just humor me for this comparison, okay? For this metaphor, you're not just in the U.S. You're not just going to hop off your couch and say, "I'm going to be a Navy SEAL." Okay, I'm going to go sign a Navy SEAL contract. Now I'm a Navy SEAL. No, there is a lot that it takes to get to that point. That's kind of how SSO is. Okay. Moving on, we've got A tier. This is what I call our high level GOR teams, GOR Legion. This is where things kind of get a little bit confusing, and I debated even bringing this up or not, but Third Assault Corps, Third Army Corps, right? It used to be Third Assault Brigade, Third Army Corps. Now technically is the banner over all GOR units and International Legion stuff. But just so put that away in your, compartmentalize that fact, okay? Because it's not really important. Just know that for future reference. So now forget it. A tier, high level gore teams. When I'm saying high level gore teams, I'm talking about teams like Rogue Company, or Rogue Team, Chosen Company, Omega, Wave Raid. These are units that are pretty, in my opinion, pretty similar to SSO units. They are filled with guys who have been in country for multiple years. These guys have a lot of experience, tons of combat operations under their belt. Um, and they they're they know exactly what they're looking for. These teams, Rogue, I want to say Rogue Company, but that's a game. Rogue Team, Chosen Company, they know who they're looking for. They're looking for experienced guys. They're looking for very specific style of recruits, new people, and oftentimes their new recruits are from word of mouth. Somebody who's been in Rogue Company or Rogue Team for a long time. He says, "Hey, my boy wants to come. I was with him in the Marines in the United States. He wants to try out for Rogue Company. All right, bring him in." Same with SSO units. It's word of mouth, right? These, if you've ever noticed, these guys don't have um, any recruiting campaigns. They don't do it. It's all word of mouth. So um, that's that. This is what I call high level gore teams. So level of training. These higher level gore teams like this, Omega, Chosen, they also have a selection process. You have to be able to do X amount of pull ups and push ups and sit ups and do 2 kilometers with X amount of weight on your back in this amount of time. They have a selection process. If you fail it, you're out. Okay. Just foundationally, this process of having selection weeds out 90% of your people who are not in Ukraine for the right reason, or they are not prepared for combat in Ukraine. You're the guys that come from off the couch. All they've done is airsoft a couple times, and they're like, "Hey, I'm gonna come fight. I'm gonna come join Rogue Team and fight Russians." They show up to selection, they get their ass kicked in selection, they get kicked out, right? Because they weren't fully prepared. Same with SSO, blah blah blah. So And then issued kit and resources. This varies so much, man, because typically Gore teams are attached to another Ukrainian unit, depending on so depending on what unit you're attached with, depends on kind of your issued kit and the resources that you get. So if you are, let's use an example. If you were attached to the 92nd um, mechanized infantry in the Ukrainian unit, 92nd Mech, they are a big unit. They're going to have a lot of resources. So if you're a Gore team that's attached to them, you're going to be able to call in for counter artillery battery and call in for FPV help if you need it, or dropper drones. If your Gore unit's attached to a smaller unit, you may not have the same type of resources, right? So that's our A tier high level Gore teams. There's some I'm forgetting, I know it, but there's like Dark Angels. There used to be a team called Black Maple. There's multiple teams I don't have on here, but this is just an example. These guys right here. All right, B. So the B is going to be probably our largest category. I put the rest of Gore units. So Gore units that are not as professional. They do not have selection processes. They do not have as good of issued kit. They do not have great resources when it comes to uh, the unit that you're attached to. Are you going to be able to have air support via drones? Are you going to get or counter battery stuff like that? No. So I don't have examples of the rest of the Gore units, but it's kind of trial and error. You're going to have to figure it out. If basically a good rule of thumb is if the Gore team, if you haven't heard of the Gore team, it's probably in this category, the rest of the Gore units. Okay. And then in this category B tier as well, we have Azov International Battalion, the unit I helped start, 3AB, 3rd Assault Brigade, which is now 3rd Army Corps. But for simplicity's sake, let's just call this 3rd Assault Brigade, 3AB, and then Hartia. Okay. Now, here's why all of these are in B tier. The level of training is sufficient. You're going to get your basic infantry training. I believe across all of these right now, it's a mandatory 2 months of basic infantry training. So that's where you're living in a barracks, you're going through boot camp, you know, you're waking up early, you're getting your exercise, your PT in, then you're training all day. You have your 0 day where they just smoke the whole team, right? And everybody learns to bond with each other. Um, it's going to be your most similar to a standard military boot camp process, boot camp situation. Also, with all three of these, um, Azov International, 3AB, and Hartia, you do not need military experience to apply. They take civilians fresh off the civilian street, right? Green as heck, never fired a weapon before, but they are serious about wanting to help Ukraine and they want to fight. So that's where these guys go. This is where most people are going to fall into. Most people applying to fight in Ukraine are going to fall in this category. Okay, so that obviously leads us to the amount of experience needed, which is none. Now, if you show up and you are, you're put into one of these units that is typically they have cycles of training units, right? So they'll wait until they got like 60 guys or 40 guys and all new recruits, new applicants, and then they'll take all these guys and ship them out to a base, train them up, and these guys all learn to train with each other, fight with each other, and then they deploy. And so if you are if you do have experience, let's say you were in the Marines for a 4-year contract in the US, or you were in the Army for a handful of years, and you decide to go with one of these units, you'll most likely take a leadership role. You'll most likely be a team leader. In some cases, you can even be, higher than that. So there is definitely room for more experienced guys in these units, absolutely. And there you'll typically they will slot you into a position according to your actual experience. Um, issued kit, and resources. These are your big general units, right? Your big National Guard units. That's Azov's in the National Guard. 3ABs in the Army, the ZSU. So these are your big infantry battalions. So you're getting the standardized plate carriers, helmets, rifles, everything's your basic infantry stuff. Okay. Um, you're not getting this very specific like higher level, higher tier operator style stuff like you would in these high level gore teams or SSO units. But you can always bring your own stuff, your own higher level get kit and gear in these units. But as far as issued kit, you're going to get the basics, right? The big helmet that's like falling sliding off the side of your head type deal when you're doing a ruck march. One thing about these units, though, is the resources. Because these are large units, Harty is huge. Third Assault Brigade's huge. Azov is the smallest of these three, but it's still large. They have artillery batteries that you can call in for support. They have casualty evacuation medic teams on standby for you and your team if needed. They have QRF, quick reaction forces. If you get ambushed, you can call in for support, right? So because these are larger units, you do get support in that sense. So B tier, that's why these are all B tier, not because they're worse or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. It's based off of the criteria that I'm talking about. Your the level of experience, the issued kit and resources, and then a selection process. All three of these have have a lot more relaxed style of selection. It's not, I wouldn't even call it selection. It's a boot camp. And if by the end of your 2 months you're still not keeping up with the team, you're still not keeping up with your boot camp unit, you can't do as many push-ups, you can't run around the track or do the ruck marches like they are, they'll remove you, right? You'll be removed in that sense, but it's not a selection process. If you show up 20 pounds overweight and you're chain smoking, you can't run at all. If you show up to one of these units and apply, you go to boot camp, and then through your 2 months, you are progressing, and the leadership and trainers see that you're getting better. You're losing that 20 pounds extra weight because you're working your ass off. You're running. You're keeping up with the team. They don't care if you showed up overweight. You're now proving yourself in boot camp. Cool. Um, so yeah, I'm willing to say 80 to 90% of all applicants, everybody looking to come to Ukraine to fight, is going to be right here in B tier. All right, and then we've got our C tier, which is most separate mechanized brigades. This will be kind of controversial because these separate mechanized units are primarily Ukrainian, but they've started taking foreigners, and some of these foreigners really, really like their mechanized. They really, really like their unit. They are kind of like taking the Ukrainians kind of have taken them under their wing and treat them like their special little foreigner and totally take care of them and stuff like that. But they are not very foreigner friendly in the sense that they're very friendly to the foreigners, but in the sense that there's not much infrastructure set up for foreigners. So like in this, like Azov's International Battalion, your commanders are speaking English, your trainers are speaking English, your battle buddies are speaking English. In these separate mechanized units, that's not the case. You're very much embedded in a Ukrainian unit and you got to make it work. But because they're growing their foreigner presence, that I'm sure that'll start to change. There will be larger separate mechanized foreigner entities out there for sure. And also they're in C tier because um they're your standard separate mechanized unit. You're getting the basics of everything. Okay, but they were knocked down from a C tier down to from a B tier down to a C tier because they're not fleshed out for foreigners quite yet from my understanding. I know multiple people in separate mechanized units, with the exception of 25th separate airborne, and that's not a separate mech. 25th separate airborne is a unit that takes a lot of foreigners. They're very well versed in handling foreigners, and they do a lot of drone work. 25th separate airborne would be in this B tier as well. All right, last we got territorial defense. Hey, this is not hating on my TDF guys, okay? The TDF are the actual backbone of the Ukrainian military. These are the guys that are in the trench for 90 days. Their helmets like this, and they're out there just fighting Russians nonstop for 90 days off of one Snickers bar and half a bottle of water. Like these guys are the goats. Okay, but that said, as a foreigner, you don't want to be there. I'm telling you right now. Um, these guys are, they're great, but they get the tough end of things. They draw the short straw every time. They, like I said, they're the one holding positions for a long time. And when you hear these stories like um Ukrainian unit found after 90 days of being on front, stuff like that, that's typically your territorial defense guys, right? So that's kind of null and void. I'm not even primarily sure of any territorial TDF teams that are taking foreigners, with the exception of TDF is also the guys usually that are doing air defense around cities. So there's TDF units in Kiev, for example, that are shooting down drones every night. That's a sweet gig, dude. And but everybody wants that job, right? All the Ukrainians want that job. They get to be home in Kiev, shoot at drones. They're in way less danger, so on and so forth. So, not all TDF jobs are booty, but as far as for what you want to do, which is come here and fight, you don't want to be in TDF. All right, guys, that was it. This I said it was going to be short, but this was literally as much knowledge from my experience here in Ukraine that I could fit into roughly a 30-minute video. I hope this was helpful. If you are still confused, still don't know what to do, whatever, even if you're not, join our Discord, guys, because we have tons of resources. I'm going to put this tier list over there in the Discord. We have so many people in Discord who were in your shoes. Now they're here in Ukraine, right? They were in the USA, for example. They found my channel. They hopped in the Discord. They met a group of guys. They came here with a couple of them. Now they're in Ukraine in a unit fighting. So jump in the Discord. It's a massive resource. Okay. Hopefully this was helpful. Please let me know in the comments if it was. I know this. Not everybody's looking to come out here to fight, so this is for a pretty specific demographic. But that's all I got, guys. I love you. We'll see you in the next video.